rules.
Aldor Peacekeeper is a classic paladin rare 3/3 for 3 mana whose card text reads Battlecry. Change an enemy minion's attack to 1. According to arena value, Aldor is picked a whopping 92% of the time in arena. Adwicta gives Aldor his highest possible rating, Beyond Great, and Trump agrees, also giving Aldor his highest possible rating. Aldor is a card that has an above average impact from turn 3 onwards, and has been a staple in all non-aggro paladin decks for as long as I've been playing Hearthstone. 3/3 for 3 are acceptable stats, but his Battlecry is really what makes him the force to be reckoned with. He can all but neutralize most major threats for only 3 mana, while also putting a decent body on the board. As with most Battlecry cards, we have to talk a little bit about how much you should be saving the card to get value out of the Battlecry versus throwing the card down for the board presence. I rarely put Aldor onto an empty board unless I'm facing a deck where board control is paramount and the remaining cards don't top out at more than, say, 5 attack or so. In this meta, that would mean I feel fine about an empty board Aldor versus Face Hunter, and sort of okay with it if it's against a mech mage and I have no other minions to drop on that turn. Other than that, it's hard for me to give advice that isn't extremely vague because there are all kinds of factors to consider when it comes to Aldor timing, and in all honesty, I'm not sure I've perfected it myself. Aldor is at his absolute best when you play him on a minion with powerful card text and high attack. For instance, if you play him on Savannah Highmane, if the opponent wants to return the Highmane's attack to 6, he will have to silence the Highmane, but then he won't get his hyenas. If you have both Aldor and Big Game Hunter in your deck, which is actually fairly common these days, it can be tricky to know when to use which card. Generally, you want to use Big Game Hunter for 7+ attack minions and save Aldor for the 6 or less attack threats. But if you suspect your opponent has a Ragnaros in their deck, it's probably actually better to hold Big Game Hunter for Ragnaros, as Aldor doesn't gimp rag in the same way it does other high attack cards. Pay careful attention to card text. Big Game Hunter, Humility, Abusive Sergeant, and other cards might lead you to believe that Aldor's Battlecry can also target your own minions, but you'd be wrong. He can't activate your own Nerubian Egg in a pinch or anything like that. He can only target enemy minions. Aldor does not negate buff auras like Direwolf Alpha, so a minion next to a Direwolf Alpha that has been Peacekeepered will actually be 2 attack instead of 1. Aldor has a tricky interaction with Enrage mechanics. Say your opponent has an Enraged Growmash on the board and you Peacekeeper it. Well, its attack will of course go to 1, but then if the Growmash takes damage, its attack will stay at 1. The only way for the Growmash to get its Enrage effect back is for the opponent to heal the Growmash back to full health, and then let it take damage again, in which case its attack will finally end up at 7. Also, in case you didn't know, using Aldor's Battlecry on Lightspawn does nothing. Return this minion to your hand effects are pretty good with Aldor, because his Battlecry is one of the few that are often worth rebuying with the card's mana cost. You can kill just about anything with Crazed Alchemist or Reversing Switch, Aldor, and a source of 1 damage, such as one of your Silver Hand recruits. Stampeding Kodo can be used in conjunction with Aldor to kill pretty much any enemy minion. Aldor actually has somewhat of an anti-synergy with Paladin's hero power, as the minion you Peacekeeper will often be able to neutralize your recruits for the next several turns if you don't deal with it. Silences can get rid of Aldor's debuff. Big minions that don't necessarily rely on having a high attack to swing the game do well against Aldor. For example, Archmage Antonidas, Ysera, Kel'Thuzad, Ragnaros. As we've said before, Lightspawn is unaffected by Aldor's Battlecry. Recombobulator can be used to effectively remove Aldor's debuff by replacing your Peacekeeper minion with another minion of equivalent cost. If it's a Molten or Mountain Giant, it's pretty much the same as silencing it, except you don't get to swing with it that turn. Wailing Soul can remove all debuffs to your creatures. Aldor is obviously good against any high attack minion, especially one that the opponent has committed a lot of resources to, such as Deathwing. Aldor was pretty good against Freezing Trap because it's really not that bad to get him back in your hand. Peacekeepering a Venture Mercenary is usually devastating for your opponent, because he can't really kill anything with it anymore, and often can't even get it to kill itself, making the remaining minions in their hand very difficult to play. Here is a Control Paladin deck with Aldor. You can put Aldor in mid-range or control decks or even aggro Paladin decks, but Control is my favorite archetype, so This is what we're going to talk about here. So we got our 2 Aldors. Aldor stands alone fine, so you don't really need anything that synergizes with it. But I did put a Stampede and Kodo in here. I do think the 8 mana Aldor Kodo combo is a smidge too slow for the current metagame. Normally I wouldn't put it in here, but just to show how it works, I left it in this deck. And I do think 2 Stampede and Kodos is too many. You probably need Humility in here to support that. Let me just go through the rest of the cards, which are standard control cards. Equality, really good paladin card, leads to board clears with any source of damage. Shielded Minibot, great addition from GVG. Wild Pyromancer, I only have 1. 2's a little clunky because it's mainly just to combo with Equality, although you can play it for the body. Muster for Battle is a really good card. We don't have Quartermaster. Quartermaster is kind of situational, but Muster for Battle is always good, so we got 2 of those in there. Mind Control Tech is really a response to Dr. Boom, and also how many Zerg-like strategies are out there, like Mech Mage. True Silver is a great value card that you put in most Paladin decks. Consecration combos with Equality, and even if it doesn't combo, it's a pretty good board clear for its mana cost. Piloted Shredder, just a solid mid-game minion to put in the deck. 2 anti-heal bots. You need a lot of healing with this deck because you're going to be sort of behind on board a lot, and then you're going to have a big turn where you like Pyro Equality and then drop a big minion. So you need the healing to stay in the game long enough until you can have one of your huge swing turns. Azure Drake is just kind of a filler card. I only have 1. It's not necessarily for the spell damage because that really only helps with Consecrate. It's just for the solid body with the card draw. Harrison Jones, it's just a tech card. It's a meta call, but there's a lot of oil rogues out there right now, so Harrison Jones is good against that. Sledge Belcher, we just have 1 because there's a lot of 5 drops, and this deck isn't really about surviving through taunts so much as it is about surviving through healing and then massive board clears. We talked about the Kodo. Piloted Sky Golem, it's a solid 6-drop. And since it has 6 attack, it often doesn't need help trading with things. And since Paladin does not have a ping hero power that does an immediate 1 damage, it's good to have something that can trade on its own. Sylvanas is just a really good legendary minion that requires a good answer or else can single-handedly steal the game away. Dr. Boom just has a ton of stats for the mana. 2 Lay on Hands, I've talked about this in other episodes. A lot of people don't use 2, but I use 2. And I got this from a streamer named Hotform because it's about the consistency of drawing Lay on Hands. Because there's so many hunters, the heal is something you often need. And also, in general, in control matchups, by turn 8, the card draw is something you usually need around then. So we have 2 Lay on Hands to make sure we get 1 on time. Kel'Thuzad is really good in this deck because we have a bunch of sticky minions, and those synergize really well with Kel'Thuzad. And Tyrion, such a good value card. If you have Tyrion, I would definitely put him in pretty much every Paladin deck you make. Let's take this deck into ranked and see how it performs. Okay, so we're against a Mage. I think Mage is a pretty fair matchup for this deck. Equality, we want to toss. Sledge Belcher costs too much, we want to toss it. I keep Shredder because we have the coin, so on turn 3 we can play a Shredder, which is pretty strong. And I throw away Mind Control Tech because it takes them a while to build up their board to the point where MC Tech can have the impact you want it to. So maybe I shouldn't have kept the Shredder. That was a little greedy. I really want a shielded mini-bot here. Or well, I did get Muster for Battle, thankfully. So we might have to skip turn 2, but other than that, we're doing okay. So here I can coin a Muster, or maybe an Aldor, or I can Hero Power, or I can coin a MC Tech. The choice between MC Tech and Aldor is kind of tricky, but I decided to go with the Muster instead, and I think that's right. Muster doesn't have any upside like Aldor or MC Tech, because we don't run Quartermasters in this deck, so it pretty much accomplishes the same thing of hopefully letting us kill his Mech Warper, but without sacrificing the upside of the card. So our opponent uses his turn 3 to just ping, which is definitely what you want to see against Mech Mage. Oh, Okay, well, he had an Annoyatron, which costs 1 less because of the Warper, so his turn was actually okay. So here, I can't really kill anything. We can go back to what I was talking about earlier with whether you want to drop an MC Tech or an Aldor just for the 3/3 body. And I think probably MC Tech because he's less likely to have a good impact. But then again, Aldor, you know, it will change the Mech Warper's attack to 1, which might be relevant. But it looks like I decided to go with MC Tech, because his hand seemed kind of slow since he pinged, so I kind of don't expect him to have 4 minions on his side of the board anytime soon. So he Unstable Portals, it's not really a card I like people putting in Mech Mage, but some people like to do it. It is a fun card, so do your thing, I guess. So all he drops that turn is a Spider Tank. He's really not rolling over us like Mech Mage can do, so it's not as scary as it could be. But anyways, we gotta think about here is, do we want to Consecrate? And since I can pretty much kill the minions for free, the Consecrate would kill anyway, I decided to just attack in with the MC Tech and with my Light's Justice, and opt to develop the board instead. This way, if he uses a Spider Tank to pick off the MC Tech, we can just clean it up with the Light's Justice. Or if he uses the tank to go into the piloted Shredder, well, that's just an even trade anyway. Oh, so he got Gelbin Mekkatorque off of the Unstable Portal, and the invention he summons is the Emboldener, which gives a buff to a random minion. And also something to note that you might not know is that all of Gelbin's inventions are themselves mechs. So he's actually going to get that synergy there if he has any Cog Masters or Blast Mages or something like that. So if we use Consecrate here, we can clear everything but the Emboldener. And the Emboldener is not that big of a threat. It's a symmetric effect, so it's just as likely to buff our minions as it is to buff his, and it has 0 attack, so I'm not too worried about it. Here I sort of think about whether I want to attack into the Emboldener or not. It's it's a free attack because the Emboldener has 0 attack, so it's not really gonna hurt us any if we attack into it. But I decide, since it's a symmetric effect, I'll just leave it up and see what happens. The downside of this is that he can play a bunch of minions this turn, and it'll make it statistically more likely that his minions get emboldened than mine. So maybe I should have attacked into it and killed it over the course of 2 turns. But as it turns out, it emboldens itself, so it would have been out of Light's Justice range anyway. So I got a Patient Assassin off of the Shredder, which is actually one of the better ones to get off Shredder, especially against Mech Mage, which doesn't have much AoE. So we just use that to clear his Shredder. He gets a Pyro, which may end up being good for him. And we just dropped the biggest minion we had, which was the Sky Golem. So he Frostbolts the Sky Golem, and that is going to proc the Pyromancer, which is going to kill the Sky Golem, and then I get a Fel Reaver. So we continue to get these interesting drops from random sources. Did I say Fel Reaver? I meant Fel Cannon. So Fel Cannon's actually... it's good here, but it's not as good as it looks because, like I said, the Emboldener is a mech, so it's actually not going to be able to kill that. And we actually, even though we're not a mech deck, we do have Sky Golem in our hand, so we can play that and it'll be immune to the Fel Cannon. And the Fel Cannon will, I guess, guaranteed kill the Pyro if this board state stays the way it is, which I don't expect it to because he does have 5 mana left. Oh, and he fireballs it, so we're not going to have any interesting, fun interactions with the Fel Cannon. And that fireball did kill his own pyro, which isn't actually that big of a sacrifice since we do have Light's Justice, so we would have killed it for basically free anyway. Here I have the choice between, say, a Sky Golem or a Drake and a Hero Power. Drake Hero Power uses mana better, so I just go with that. Okay, he goes with a Lotheb, and that's not too devastating for us. We don't have any spells we were really keen on playing here. We get our Kodo. Unfortunately, well, actually, there's not much that's bigger than a Lotheb in most Mech Mage decks, except for Antonidas and Dr. Boom. So I do actually think here it's worth using our cool little combo where we Aldor and then Kodo. And this means that we feed the Mirror Entity and Aldor, which we can immediately kill, which altogether is pretty good for this deck. We don't have many little minions that we want to get Mirror Entity'd. We don't have Zombie Chow in this deck, so clearing that Mirror Entity with the Aldor is pretty good, since we have like a Sky Golem and a Harrison in our hand that we want to be able to get rid of. So he does Dr. Boom. We could have technically saved our Aldor Kodo combo for that, but I don't think waiting was worth it. And the Emboldener has buffed itself like 4 times now, which is crazy, seeing as how many other minions have been on the board. But anyways, let's see, what can we do here? We could Equality, and that could clear most everything. And like I was saying before, Mech Mage doesn't have that many big threats, so we don't really need to save Equality that much. So we'll just attack in here. There is some merit to maybe hero powering first there to absorb a bomb hit, because he could use his burn on us, but he has already used a fireball. And we didn't really want to make a dude there, we wanted to drop Sky Golem anyway. So I just went ahead and hit the Boombot and accepted the face damage. Mad Scientist, that seems a little late for him, so that's good. Mechanical Yeti we can take out pretty easily. And what's his last card? Oh, he attacks in, and he gets a pretty lucky hit. So he kills the Sky Golem with just 1 Boombot, which is one of the reasons why Dr. Boom is so powerful. And his last card was a Cogmaster. So we got Master of Disguise, basically just a 4/4, which is... It actually may be... I think it is above average for a Sky Golem drop. We've held on to Light's Justice for a long time now, so we have enough to clean up the Yeti with it. Our spare part is a freezing one, which is one of the best. Not in this situation necessarily, but it's overall one of the most powerful spare parts you can get. And he's just going to trade into the heal bot. He's going to get a secret, which is likely a second Mirror Entity, although a lot of Mech Mages are running Counterspell as well, so have to be careful about that. You definitely don't want to get a Lay on Hands Counterspelled. That's a pretty big tempo loss, like basically a free secret off a Mad Scientist killing an 8 mana card. He has 8 mana and he decides not to play anything. I guess one of those cards is a spare part, but I think the other one is a real card. So I'm not sure what that could be. We Pyro, and it is Mirror Entity, so we're going to True Silver down the Pyro and Harrison into the Cogmaster. Could have Harrisoned into the Pyro, but we are at 16 health, and he, like I said, he used 1 Fireball already. And if you Harrison into the Pyro, then he can just use his hero power to kill the Harrison, which is not ideal. So I'm thinking maybe that one card he has was a Blast Mage. It's something situational, and Mech Mage is one of the reasons it's so powerful is it doesn't have many situational cards. And yet again, he passes the turn without playing a card, so I'm a little confused as to what he has in his hand right now. And I'm not really concerned about Mind Control Tech. That's pretty uncommon in Mech Mage, so I'm just going to continue to drop my minions. This is bad against Flame Strike, but Flame Strike is not commonly run in Mech Mage. We'll see. Okay, so what he was holding was like a Mech Warper and a Tinker Town that he wanted to get value off of, and another Tinker Town. So I'm not sure if it was right for him to hold those cards, but he did. And it did sort of pay off because he did manage to pick up a mech to activate him. And now his hand should just be 3 spare parts, I believe. We have to be careful with using... We got 3 spells in our hand, and we have to remember that Pyro will kill our recruits if we use any of those 3 spells, in addition to killing himself, so... That's definitely a mistake I've made before. With that being said, it's probably best to use our Pyro to trade off, so then we can lay on hands and pretty much secure the win here. So we'll Pyro into the 4/4 and then lay on hands first to see what we get, although it almost surely won't change our play. Kel'Thuzad is nice. So we drew into a bunch of gas here, so to speak. We got our big dudes, we got Dr. Boom, Kel'Thuzad, Tyrion. We're looking pretty good here. He drops a Shredder and nothing else. So we can KT here and then run our Belcher into the Shredder. And we'll refresh our Belcher. And we'll also get the Slime. You have to think a little bit about whether you want to kill the Shredder first or not. If it's a Doomsayer that comes out of the Shredder, you definitely want to kill the Shredder first to make sure you don't drop a KT into a Doomsayer, which is bad. And if it were a Mana Wraith or a Nerubar Weblord, we actually had enough mana where we could play the Kel'Thuzad anyway. So overall, I think killing the Shredder first was the right order there. It's going to ping face. We're at like 25 health, so it's going to take him a while to whittle us down that way. I'm not too worried about it. And our board is super strong. We got like 12 damage, I think. And a True Silver, so we're like 2 damage off lethal, but it doesn't really matter. We're just going to keep dropping big dudes. Even whatever powerful AoE he might have randomly thrown into his Mech Mage deck doesn't really scare me in this instance. Okay, reversing switch, probably Fireball. Yeah, so we can kill the KT, but we still have lethal damage on board, so it doesn't really matter. And we won. And you got to see the Aldor Kodo combo in action, which I thought was pretty cool. And I thought this was a pretty interesting game because of all the like random Mekkatorques and Fel Cannons and all that stuff. So, hope you enjoyed that game.
Last warning!